Welcome back to the channel. My name's Pamela. Today we're discussing another Yellowjackets theory. Goes without saying there will be spoilers in this video, so if you're not caught up on Yellowjackets, come back to this later. So we know in episode 4 that Lottie died. According to episode 5, it was officially ruled an accident, but Misty thinks something fishy is up with this, and so do I. I put out a previous theory video about this, who I think could have killed Lottie. If you have not seen that one, definitely go check it out after this video. We are going to talk about a little bit of the points that I made in my other video, but I think episode 5 had a lot more clues about what possibly happened to Lottie. So let's get into it. So was Lottie's death a murder, a suicide, or just a complete accident? I said in my last theory video that I think it was either all three girls, Ty, Van, and Shauna working together, or a suicide. We know that Ty, Shauna, and Van were all in New York City at the same time when Lottie died. We also know that Misty was unaccounted for. She left work early and she was gone for hours. No one knows where she was. But I don't think Misty was involved because when she found out about Lottie's death, she seemed surprised and she was by herself. No one was around for her to put an act on for. We also know that not long before Lottie's death, she went to the bank. We find out in this episode, episode 5, that she withdrew $50,000. And before her death, we also see her talking to herself in the mirror, apologizing. I don't know whether she was practicing to apologize to someone else, or maybe she was apologizing to herself. Maybe she was planning on killing herself. Something that I thought was interesting in episode 5 is when the teens are trying to figure out who's going to kill Coach Ben, they decide to draw cards just like they do for everything else. When it comes to chores, they draw cards, and we saw them draw cards in season 2 to figure out who they were going to kill to eat. And also during the hunt in the adult timeline in season 2, we know that when they draw the Queen of Hearts, that is who is going to die. But when it comes to who's going to kill Ben, Van decides that it should be the King of Hearts. And immediately when she said King of Hearts, I thought of the previous episode. When Lottie looks at the drawing that Travis is holding, in Lottie's hand, she is holding the King of Hearts. And I noticed that last week during episode 4, I thought it was very intentional. And I thought to myself, King of Hearts, what does that mean? It's not the Queen of Hearts. What does the King of Hearts mean? And of course, that came into play in episode 5. Van calls it the Suicide King. So as soon as she called the King of Hearts the Suicide King, I was like, all right, is this a clue that Lottie actually did kill herself? Because she was holding the King of Hearts during the outcome. Travis says that this drawing is the outcome. And in my previous theory video, I said to you guys, what is this the outcome of? Travis doesn't say what the outcome is. Is it the outcome to Ben's trial? Or is it the outcome to Lottie's life, which depicts her death? I previously theorized that this drawing of the outcome, the body laying on the floor is Lottie, and the three people standing around are Shauna, Ty, and Van, who were all there in New York City. Does this outcome mean that the three of them worked together to kill Lottie? But like I said, now that she was holding the King of Hearts, as she's looking at the outcome, does that imply that Lottie killed herself? This combined with the fact that Lottie went to the bank to withdraw $50,000 and the fact that she was apologizing in the mirror, did Lottie know that she was going to die? Was she planning to kill herself, like her holding the Suicide King might suggest? Now we find out in episode 5 that Lottie has been living with her father in his penthouse for the past 2 weeks. So maybe when Lottie was apologizing in the mirror, maybe she was planning to apologize to her dad, and he might have something to do with her death. We know that Misty, Shauna, and Walter go to Lottie's penthouse and interact with Lottie's dad, and I think there are a lot of clues in these scenes with Lottie's dad at his home. So we know that back in the wilderness when Lottie was a teen and Laura Lee baptized her, Lottie had a vision of the place where she died. In Lottie's vision, she is like walking down a hallway or some kind of tunnel, and she goes up the staircase that is lined with candles, and this is the same location where she is found dead. Also during this vision, Lottie sees a deer There's a deer there in the hallway that leads her to where she goes up the stairs and lights the candle. Now when Misty is in Lottie's dad's penthouse, she goes to snoop around and we see Lottie's coat hanging on a coat rack. And something I thought was interesting is this coat rack sort of looks like deer antlers. This show is big on imagery and symbolism. Certain things actually have meaning, so could this mean that Lottie's dad led her to her death, sort of like this deer that was in her vision? Now in episode 5, we find out that Lottie withdrew $50,000. Why did she do that? I don't know. But something that Lottie's dad said I thought was very interesting. He insists that it was an accident, but Misty says to him, I think I saw Lottie with someone down in the lobby. And the dad says, probably with one of those cult nutsos. And Misty says, what if one of them pushed her down the stairs? And Lottie's dad gets very defensive. He says, no, it was an accident. And if Artie down at the station says otherwise, the foundation won't see a dime. So I am thinking maybe Lottie withdrew the money for her dad. I mean, we know that he's rich, but I don't know, maybe something happened to his money. Maybe he needed it, an extra $50K for something, I don't know. So what if she withdrew the money for him, wanted to apologize for something, and what if her death really was just an accident? What if they got into some kind of argument or disagreement and he pushed her down the stairs? Whether it was on purpose or an accident, we don't know. But I really am starting to think that Lottie's dad had something to do with it. I feel like he was introduced within this storyline because how else are we going to find out exactly what happened? When it comes to Travis's death in season 1, there's this whole mystery about what really happened. And we find out what exactly happened to Travis because of Lottie. She was there to witness it. If Lottie wasn't there to witness Travis's death, how would we have found out the truth? So I think we're gonna see Lottie's dad again in future episodes, and he's gonna talk to someone, whether it's Misty or Shauna or someone, and he's going to verbally tell us what happened. Because how else would we find out? I'm starting to think that it really was just an accident rather than a murder. Because we know that so often in the show, when the girls think it's something else and something bigger, it ends up actually being nothing. Season 1, the girls think that they're being blackmailed, but it was really just Jeff. With Travis's death, Natalie thinks he was murdered, but it was just an accident. So with Lottie's death, we're all thinking that it was a murder, but it probably was just an accident. A couple other things I want to quickly throw out there, which I did mention in my episode 5 breakdown video, but in case you missed that, I'll just quickly run through. Something I thought was interesting is Walter says to Shauna, mutually assured destruction can be devastatingly effective. And it made me think back to season 1. Shauna and Callie say this in a conversation. After Callie finds out about her affair with Adam, and Callie's kind of threatening to tell Jeff about the affair, Shauna mentions, have you ever heard of mutually assured destruction? And Callie says, I practically invented it. So could this be a subtle little clue that maybe Callie had something to do with Lottie's death? I don't know. We know that they formed a little bit of a bond right before she died, so maybe she had something to do with it. I don't really think so. I am leaning more towards Lottie's dad, but just thought this was interesting. Something else that they focused on was Walter noticing the trash bags being taken out. So this might come into play in a future episode, maybe next week, and maybe he's gonna dig through the trash bags and find out another clue that could point towards Lottie's dad being the cause of her death. Now, there's a scene when Shauna goes into Lottie's bedroom and Shauna talks to Lottie's dad, and I think there are a few interesting things during the scene. First of all, I do just want to point out that we get this little flashback with teen Lottie that I don't think we've seen before. She looks like her face is covered in blood. I wonder what the hell is going on with that. Like, what does Lottie do in the wilderness that we have yet to see? Now, when Shauna is in Lottie's room, Lottie's dad comes in and thinks that Shauna is Lottie. He sees Lottie as a teenager, and Shauna kind of goes along with it so that he can think that he's actually talking to Lottie. We know that he is not of sound mind. He has dementia or something. So he is thinking that Shauna is Lottie, and they have a little conversation, and I think there's a few interesting lines of dialogue. So first of all, the dad says to Lottie, I hate it when you don't listen to me. And that stood out to me, like maybe they were arguing about something, like I said earlier, and they got into a little bit of a heated conversation, and maybe he accidentally pushed her down the stairs. Maybe it was on purpose, we don't know, but maybe they were in an argument and she wasn't listening to him, and maybe he goes to walk away, she's pulling on his arm, he goes to kind of swat her away, and she falls down the stairs. Something else within the conversation with the dad and Shauna, when he thinks Shauna's Lottie, he says, why don't we order some of that Chinese food that you like? And this is another thing that stood out to me, because in season 2, Lottie has a vision. It's when her and Natalie go out to have a competition of who can hunt down food, and Lottie starts to get hypothermia. She has a vision, and she is in a mall, and all the girls are there in the vision, and they're all sitting down at a table eating Chinese food. I don't know what significance this has, but I've said before, I like to overanalyze the scenes and the clues, and we never know what has meaning in this show. They're big on symbolism. So Lottie has a vision of her place of death that obviously has meaning to the story, and then she has a vision where there's Chinese food. Both have something to do with her dad. Her place of death is in her dad's apartment building, and her other vision has to do with Chinese food, which her dad mentioned while he was kind of seeing teen Lottie. But within that vision in the mall where they're eating Chinese food, Laura Lee is there, and she speaks to Lottie. And I said in a previous video, Lottie has some sort of connection with Laura Lee when it comes to these deaths. So when Laura Lee is baptizing Lottie, and Lottie has the vision of the place where she's going to die, when Lottie is still underwater and she opens up her eyes, she sees Laura Lee as like this blacked out figure. And then when Lottie was there for Travis's death, she sees this scary version of Laura Lee. We also know that before Lottie's death, she drained her bank account, and after Travis's death, she drains Travis's bank account. So when it comes to Lottie's death and Travis's death, there is something there with Laura Lee draining the bank account, and then a separate vision that Lottie has, Laura Lee is there, and they're eating Chinese food, and then Lottie's dad, who I think might have something to do with Lottie's death, mentions getting Chinese food with Lottie. I don't know, there's just these crazy connections. What do you guys think it all means? I previously theorized that maybe Lottie killed herself, but when Misty is talking to the concierge, he says that Lottie seemed normal and happy the day before. So that, combined with all of these clues with Lottie's dad, makes me think that he has something to do with it. Speaking of the concierge, something else I want to quickly mention, which I did mention in the episode 5 breakdown, the concierge offers Misty a lollipop. And it made me think of, in season 2, we see Van eating a lollipop, similar looking ones at that. Red round lollipops. Obviously this could very well mean nothing, but I don't know, is this a subtle little clue that maybe Van had something to do with Lottie's death? Last thing I want to bring up is about Ty. So I previously said, did the 3 girls have something to do with it? Ty, Van, and Shauna were all in New York City. Now I want to talk about what happens in episode 5 when Ty is getting ready to kill Ben. We know that other Ty came out right before she was about to shoot Ben. But Travis, Lottie, and Akilah interfered and stopped Ty from shooting Ben. So it makes me wonder, does Ty maybe have some sort of vendetta against them? Is it possible that Ty could be somewhat responsible for Travis's death and we don't know it yet? And Lottie's death? And will she maybe do something to Akilah in the wilderness? Maybe because these 3 people, Travis, Lottie, and Akilah, took a kill away from other Ty, maybe she has something against these 3 people. I don't know, that's just another crazy theory I'm throwing out there. Literally, when it comes to this show, anything is possible. But yeah, to sum this all up, I think Lottie's dad had something to do with it. Whether it was on purpose or an accident, he might have pushed her down the stairs. And I think we haven't seen the last of Lottie's dad yet, because if he was involved, he needs to verbally explain it to another character, and so that we, the audience, can find out the truth about what happened to Lottie. I'm just thinking it's not what we really think. Just like always, with the blackmail, with Travis's death, The girls think it's something larger, and it's not. It's just one of them or an accident. I know I mentioned several different suspects in this video, like Shauna, Ty, Van, Callie, the dad. I do like to look at all angles and examine all of the clues, but when it comes down to it, I really think it was just an accident involving the dad. But that is it for today. Please give this video a like if you enjoyed it. Definitely go check out my episode 5 breakdown. It was just sort of a recap and review. Subscribe to the channel if you're new here. Hit that notification bell so that you don't miss out on future Yellowjackets theories and my weekly recaps and reviews. Please also go follow me over on TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram, and I will see you guys next time.